Thank you, Henrik. Good morning. Oh, welcome in Paris. My name is Florian Lefevre, and I work for MARLINK, which is a satellite communication company. So a little bit far away from the other presentations that you will have today. As Henrik said, we are a kind of small piece of the puzzle that makes the picture complete. So here we are talking today about how we can transform a traditional grid into smart grid with definitely some new objectives such as sustainability, efficiency, reliability, and flexibility that are totally changing the way utility companies are taking decisions, the technologies they are putting over the network, given the situation that most of the network is already there, and we have to deal with technologies that are there since sometimes 20 years. The main aspect in our regard is if you go to digitalization, you get big data, and you need to backhaul this data. So definitely, connectivity is one of the most important pieces of the IoT deployment value chain. But you will say, yeah, thank you, Florian, but we already have GSM and LTE, and this is doing the work perfectly. Well, this is doing most of the work, and here I will not be talking about the 90% of the sites, of the geographies that are covered already by these traditional terrestrial technologies. You don't need me for that. And in MARLINK, we like a bit of complexity, so we will help you to cover the remaining 10%, where the telecommunication is potentially there, but not reliable, such as continents like in Africa or certain part of Asia, but also sometimes in Europe as well. I didn't want to speak about Sweden specifically. And also to cover some parts that are just simply not covered, because we know how GSM operators are deploying their network. Well, they basically cover the places where there's people. If there's no people, there's no coverage. No people doesn't mean that there's nothing. So, for example, when talking about utilities, in France, there's about 800 production sites that are outside of the terrestrial coverage. And if we are talking about Europe, then it's 11% of the total Europe that is not covered by LTE. At the same time, countries are evolving differently. Some countries are evolving very quickly on the technology. For some other countries, it's a little bit more slow. So there's also a question of interoperability. So what we realize is that connectivity is key in the data backhauling of the sensors of the grid. There's many places where there's nothing. And the good thing is that there's satellite. Satellite is an infrastructure, a telecommunication infrastructure that is already there. It's up in the air. There are several hundreds of satellites in there, and they are just here for you to use them. So no or limited capex when it comes to deploying a brand new infrastructure. Satellite communications also bring some key advantages in the mix. The first one is that it's always on and it's global. With basically 3 to 4 satellites, you cover the whole world. So it means that you don't have to ask yourself the question on the means of communication for any site. It is there for sure. The second aspect of it is the critical and reliability of this type of infrastructure. Satellite has been designed for the worst situation. They are basically today used by our defense. All our defense are using satellite communication, NGOs, media, for example, to broadcast from anywhere in the world. People that basically need a very high level of reliability, and they use satellite because it's there, it's available, and the reliability is much higher than terrestrial network. One advantage as well, which is not a small advantage, is the scalability. Because you do not deploy your own infrastructure, you're not dependent on the deployment of the infrastructure of an operator, because the infrastructure is already there. You can basically scale at your rhythm. So if you're 10% of the sites that you don't know what to do with or remote, and it's just one site, you can equip it today already with satellite. So satellite brings 100% coverage and close to 100% reliability, and is bidirectional, such as standard networks. So if we move concrete in how it's used today and how it enables IoT, we'll see that SATCOM is basically there at every step of the value chain. The first one, the generation part. Today, satellite is commonly used for remote communication. So you've got a dam in the middle of nowhere, in the mountains, you've got nothing, you put SATCOM. Okay, this is already used like that. Second part is backup communication. So you've got any site, a critical site, you cannot rely on one only way of communication, so you will put an additional one, which will be satellite, and you use it or not, but in case of any situation, it will be there because it relies on an infrastructure that is 30,000 kilometers away from any ground situation. When it comes to the IoT part, for generation, IoT just makes the connectivity, the data backhaul even more important, because one of the advantages of the digitalization is to put sensors and artificial intelligence where you wouldn't like to put people, because it's not safe, it's too far away, it's too costly for any reason. So you will put sensors that will generate data, and satellite will backhaul this data, enabling more predictive maintenance than reactive maintenance, for example. Smart security. Traditionally, big utility operator has been using satellite communication for disaster recovery. When there's a natural disaster or a nuclear disaster, for example, all the infrastructure is destroyed. So it means nothing works. Once again, satellite is being protected for that. So it's already traditionally used for that. When it comes to the IoT business application, with the connectivity developing, the digitalization developing, there's more need for security, cyber security. Cyber security is good, but it generates an additional flow of data, both sides. And you need to have a very secure network in a way. Satellite also enables that because it's already a private network that has been designed to be encrypted. You can control the flow of data end-to-end from the site to your HQ and make sure that there's no intrusion. So there's a lot of benefits to that. Also, when it comes to the workers, the field operators, the good aspects of our world is human are still needed, and you want to keep them safe. You want them to be able to communicate, so you will track them. You will be able to provide them data. We've got also real-time data, and you will also be able to do, for example, some radio over satellite. So very easy stuff that will keep your personnel safer. One of the benefits that we have seen in some of the countries is a reduction of cost of, for example, the insurance premium because of satellite enabling capabilities. Last but not least, the distribution, and I think that's for us, SATCOM operators, the newest part of the market. This was really the less connected part of the network. And for us, it's a brand new part of market. IoT basically brings a real-time control of the overall grid. For that, you're very much depending on the data and its backhaul. And you cannot always spread the natural terrestrial connectivity. For example, for wind farms, just as an example, you will need probably to bring fiber. But for a small reclosure, you want to control your reclosures around the grid, you will not put fiber on every reclosure. It will be far too costly. So the scalability of the satellite and the variety of type of technologies in the satellite world will allow you to control real-time everywhere your network with very small, cheap, affordable devices. And basically it will allow you to be, once again, into predictive maintenance instead of reactive maintenance, to reduce downtime and reduce outages, and in some countries reduce regulation, fines that has been put in place by the regulation in case you as a utility operator do not meet the SLAs. For example, in Brazil, we've deployed tens of thousands of satellite devices, and it allowed the satellite operators, the utility operators, to save millions and millions of dollars of fine. So, as you can see, the idea is not the technology for the technology. The technology brings some savings when it comes to maintenance, insurance, and fines, for example. So, outside of the everyday control that you will have, you will also save money operating the smart grid. To finish, I would like to take an example, a more concrete example of what we have worked on with Schneider Electric and Microsoft, because one of the main challenges of the utility operator are the interoperability of their network. Their network has not been developed at the same time, so some part of the grid is extremely old, working with old technologies, and some new parts are at the highest standard. And we have worked with Schneider and Microsoft to create a box that will interpret any type of protocol from old to the newest, and translate them into today's IoT protocols. This also being put on the Azure Microsoft Cloud so that it's available and secure from everywhere in the world. It's a very concrete example where you can bring the digitalization even to the oldest part of your network with a very limited investment. And it's already there, out of the shelf, working and labeled with some key stakeholders of the industry, such as Schneider and Microsoft. So what is MARLINK role in that environment? We interconnect and integrate your operations. All the different part of the communication that are important to you, we put them together. And we act as an agnostic approach ourselves. Agnostic in terms of satellite technology that can be used if you need to send a small message every day or live streaming video, you will not need the same satellite device. And we will help you to build a kind of network where the most appropriate technology will be used at the most appropriate place. And not everybody can be an expert of satellites, so we are just working with you on the requirement and translate it just into a seamless situation that we deliver end-to-end and that we also integrate with some of your traditional technologies that you're using every day. We are connected to multi types of cloud services, so not only Microsoft, but also AWS, for example, and some smaller players. We can spread networks through microwaves, WiMAX, and Wi-Fi. So when it comes to, I would say, upstream or downstream, there's also what I would say around the satellite connectivity, which is just a part of the communication channel. We also interconnect all this with your existing network so that it's easy to deploy. There's already a lot of utilities operators that are trusting us. Our traditional field is the maritime world with merchant shipping and cruise ship, etc. Mining, oil and gas, so all this is our most traditional market. But already in the electricity sector, we are working with some of the key players such as EDF in France and in UK, Fingrid in Finland, Vattenfall, Neo Energia in Brazil, and all these types of customers, they are already having a part of their network which is satellite. So it's not like I'm selling you an ID. No, I'm selling you a concrete capability that is there since more than 20 years, that is affordable and easily deployable. Just a few words about MARLINK. We are not very well known, but we are still an old company, 70 years of experience. And we are a global company, so we are capable of supporting you in various parts of the world and on every continent. We operate today 5,000 vessels, 1,000 fixed sites, but it's about 200,000 customers that we've got overall. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions from the audience? I have a microphone for you here. You can even throw it. Any questions? Then I will ask you a question. So, if you want to give advice, if you are a utility or if you're someone who has this fundamental connectivity problem, the last 10%, how would you propose, or what do you think is the best way how to think and plan about bringing this in? Is this something you figure out and do, how do you plan around this?
Yeah.
How would you like us to act smartly?
I think that's a major challenge because we are all confronted to the reality of our business, and we always think that, okay, let's cover the first 90% and we'll think about the others later, because when I get there, I will be already happy. And sometimes in big companies, some people are thinking, I may not be there when the problem will arise. In my opinion, it's important to have the big picture. And we've seen the customers that I highlighted earlier that have taken part of their network into satellite. What they have been doing is they have been thinking about the big picture from day one. they have not been so much pragmatic. They knew that their infrastructure would be there for a long, long time, that it will anyway be more and more used and more critical. So they thought, well, we cannot rely on just one single technology. We need to understand how we can cover full of our sites and what are the technology that will be also future-proof. When you see the rhythm of GSM technologies, there's a new standard every 5 years, more or less. If you're talking satellite, a satellite when it's launched, we know it 5 years in advance, and it will be up in the skies for 20 years. So it's a future-proof choice that you can make from day one. And because it's scalable, you don't have to care too much on when it will happen and how much site in total you will have to cover and what will be the cost associated to that. Because you can really go to with the rhythm. So you can care about this last 10% site at the end, but you need to plan in advance that you have 10% sites that will not be covered, because that's in most of the situations, the issue, they realize that there are 10% that are a problem when they become a problem.
Okay, so the optimum idea is not to make this as an afterthought, but as a strategic choice for the last 10%, so you really understand how it will work together. Because if you start and think about it in the very end, sometimes it can be tricky to make it all fit together again.
Yeah, it will basically be more complex to do it. So it's never too late to realize that you've got a problem. That's not what I'm saying. But if you see that there will be a problem, the sooner you will take it into account, the most easy it will be to cover it.
Okay, I think that was a very good key message. So thank you very much for this presentation.
Thank you
Thank
all.
you very
Thank
much.
you, Henrik.
Yeah.